if we look at a lot of live performances nowadays, there's so much going on. Like it's not just when I'm speaking of like if you go to a concert. So if you attend it, it's not just going to be somebody on stage singing and playing instruments, etc. There's all sorts of lights like LEDs, imagery that sync with the music, the sound, or even dance. Like people will wear outfits that will light up depending on what kind of dance move they are using, etc. Like there's a lot of really fascinating things going on live that kind of blur the intersection of the arts, broadly speaking, and computer science. That's really cool. And there's even some organizations that specifically explore those connections. But if we go back to like some of the software, like digital audio workstations or DAWs, they often use something called a virtual studio technology or VSTs. And so these are plugins that make it so that you can make your music software do something you could not do. So let's say you had it like an analog synthesizer that you really like, but it's like dying on you, and you wanted to be able to create one that you can use in your virtual program, your software. Cool. You can make a VST that will be that analog synthesizer, etc. In order to create stuff like that, I argue you have to have an understanding of not just computer science, but also music making. And so there are entire careers that like are specifically looking for programmers with a strong background in some kind of music making, etc. Because you don't want to just hire somebody who doesn't know how to make music because they know how to program, because then you're going to be like having to teach them, well, here's this very basic concept, etc. Like you have to be able to understand both. But now I want to give you an example that's like probably more catered toward high school students that might really be interested in this. So video game sound design is a whole new thing. It's no longer just about like composing music, like here's a score and it will play. If you think of a movie when you're composing music, the movie, you know exactly how long that scene is going to be. And the composers, like given parameters, like, hey, we want it to be action oriented. It needs to be exactly 14 seconds long and have some hit points on the like the 3 second and the 8 second marker. I don't know, stuff like that. But in video games, what if I'm really good at video games and I can finish that sequence in 5 seconds? Or what if I'm really bad at video games and it takes me like an hour just to get through this thing that most people can do in a minute? Well, at some point in there, you're going to need to be able to program maybe even some hints, audibly speaking. There's this game that I played called Flower, and it kind of like guides you audibly and visually to be able to figure out what your objectives are. It doesn't like tell you, hey, collect the flower petals and like all this stuff. It's just like you kind of float around and you explore, and then it kind of like nudges you in a direction by like pushing some wind over here. The same thing can be done with audio. So you can literally program a video game to help somebody out with just the audio cues of like, oh, I think I hear something over in that direction. Maybe I should go over there. But if we really want to get extra nerdy, I have a friend named Julian who works at Gearbox Studios, which is like a really big game development company. And one of the things that he was talking about is like the things you have to consider with virtual reality and sound design. So if you're playing in a video game, there are certain like ways that you can interact by like pressing a button and it'll do something. But if I'm in virtual reality, like let's say I'm in this room that I'm in right here, and I pick up my cell phone. If I'm able to hold my cell phone, now where I throw it is going to make a different sound. If I throw it into the room far away, it's going to make a different sound. If like that room is all made out of metal, what if I throw it into a room that's made out of wood? What if I drop it on my keyboard or tap it on the mouse? What if I move it in different directions, etc., and I just start like hitting it on every single object in this room? You could go in and record every single combination of sound in every single acoustic environment, etc. Or you could record maybe one sound or not record a sound at all, but instead actually design the sound algorithmically and take into all kinds of different factors and mathematical equations and algorithms to be able to go, okay, when it is touching metal on plastic inside of a wooden room, it will sound like this. And if it is being bonked on my head inside of, I don't know, a room that is full of padded walls, it's going to sound completely different. So that kind of intersection is what's really coming in the future of like game design for not only music, but also for sound. And I find that fascinating. You're really going to need to have some people who have a firm understanding of programming and just sound in general, and who like to nerd out with algorithms and math to be able to make it sound like this cell phone would sound in an actual environment, in a virtual environment.
That's wild. That is so fantastic. I've never put thought to that, I guess. I'm not a huge gamer. I've played some games, but I'd never put thought to those pieces. But that's so intriguing. And I think we have a huge population of kids who are going to be really interested in that piece. We
Mhm.
see a lot of kids in computer science who are like, oh, game development for sure, but it's cool to look at all those other pieces of development that are included. Interesting.
Yeah, the
Kind of
sound
blew my
design
mind
is
a little bit.
it's so cool. And most music educators like don't really think about sound broadly speaking. They think about music. And the music side is really cool because like you can layer in like 20 different sound variations. Like if there's 5 enemies in the room, only play 4 of them. But if there's 100 enemies, play like 20 of them. Like there's so many cool things you can do. But like the sound and virtual reality, like the intersections of computer science is just it's fascinating. This excerpt of the CSKA podcast is from episode number 169. It's called Computer Science and Music, CSTA Wyoming interview.